Welcome back to 2 Cents Unfiltered, the show where we go past surface takes and dig into what history should teach us, but often doesn't. Today we're tackling something big, uncomfortable, and overdue. After the Soviet Union collapsed, the world missed a once-in-a-century chance to hold a Nuremberg-type trial and fully expose the destruction and evil of socialism and communism. This episode isn't about nostalgia or Cold War chest beating. It's about accountability, truth, and why failing to confront one of the most murderous systems in modern history left us weaker and more confused today. Let's break this down. Setting the stage. When the Berlin Wall fell in 1989 and the Soviet Union officially dissolved in 1991, the West celebrated. We heard the end of history. Capitalism and liberal democracy had won. But what never happened? Justice. After World War II, the Allies gathered in Nuremberg to hold Nazi leaders accountable, crimes meticulously documented, survivors heard, perpetrators tried. That trial defined for generations that some ideologies cross a moral line so red they can't just fade away. Yet when the USSR, a regime responsible for tens of millions of deaths through purges, gulags, engineered famines, and political terror, collapsed, there was no equivalent, no courtroom, no reckoning, no permanent record burned into global memory. We shrugged and moved on. The scale of the crime. Let's be clear on what was lost by skipping that reckoning. The Holodomor, Stalin's engineered famine in Ukraine, killing 3 to 5 million in 1932 to 33. The Great Terror, purges and executions in the late 1930s, hundreds of thousands shot, millions sent to Siberian camps. The Gulag Archipelago, forced labor camps that swallowed poets, priests, farmers, scientists. Some estimates run 18 million sent through. Eastern Europe after World War II, Poland, Hungary, Czechoslovakia crushed under Soviet tanks for daring to dissent. Cultural genocide in places like Tibet, Xinjiang, later Chinese communist campaigns inspired by Soviet methods. Historian Stéphane Courtois and others estimate the global communist death toll near 100 million lives. But because there was no tribunal, those numbers stayed abstract. Compare that with how the name Auschwitz sears the conscience. Where is the global shorthand for Kolyma or Vorkuta? Why the West looked away. Some reasons are understandable, but tragic. 1. Geopolitical convenience. The Cold War ended peacefully. The US and Europe wanted stability, not show trials that might antagonize New Russia. 2. Elite's blind spot. Many Western academics and journalists had sympathized with leftist movements. Confronting communism's crimes was inconvenient. 3. Transition fatigue. After decades of tension, there was appetite for markets and pop culture, not moral heavy lifting, but the cost of avoiding moral clarity, amnesia, the crimes blurred, the ideology mutated and rebranded. Why Nuremberg matters. Nuremberg wasn't perfect, but it did 4 critical things. It documented evil with evidence that endures. It delegitimized Nazism forever. No nostalgia chic survived serious scrutiny. It created legal precedents for crimes against humanity and genocide. It taught new generations that ideas have victims. If we'd done the same for communism and socialism, we'd have archives, testimony, and moral guardrails. Instead, there's space for romanticism and whitewashing. Che Guevara on t-shirts, hammer and sickle emojis on social media, nostalgia for free healthcare and housing, without mention of secret police and starvation. Modern consequences. Look around. Young Americans and Europeans polling with favorable views of socialism, often meaning fairness and safety nets, but without any memory of where centrally planned states led. Authoritarian regimes, Russia's revanchism, China's surveillance state, able to rehabilitate parts of the Soviet story. Weak pushback when democratic norms erode, we've lost the moral reflex to say this path kills. The void left by no communist Nuremberg still shapes debate today. Imagine. A global tribunal convened in the early 90s. Survivors from gulags, famines, Eastern Bloc repression testifying publicly. Soviet Politburo members and KGB officials examined for documented crimes. Declassified archives opened, victims named, numbers made irrefutable. It wouldn't have been vengeance. It would have been truth-telling and historical vaccination against utopian violence. Why it still matters. It's not too late for moral clarity. We can still build archives and public museums dedicated to communist crimes. Integrate the full record of Soviet atrocities into education. Support survivors and dissidents who keep memory alive. Demand intellectual honesty when people trivialize or romanticize ideologies that cost millions of lives. If you don't name evil and put it on trial, it doesn't disappear. It shapeshifts. Here's my unfiltered 2 cents. History's unfinished work comes back to bite. The West celebrated the fall of the USSR like a sports win, but skipped the hard moral work. Because we didn't hold a Nuremberg for communism, today we wrestle with ideological confusion and historical illiteracy, but it's not over. We, thinkers, teachers, journalists, podcasters like me, and listeners like you, can push for clarity now. We can refuse to let euphemisms or nostalgia hide suffering. We can call things what they are. Systems that promise paradise but built gulags. The 20th century left us warning signs in blood. Our job is to keep them visible. This is 2 Cents Unfiltered. Thanks for tuning in, and don't forget, history isn't done teaching if we're willing to learn.